There we go.
We're live.
We're live.
Okay, hi, I'm Tom Russell, and I am with Berkshire Hathaway here in Missoula, Montana.
And I am Sheila Mischke, and I am a broker with Kelly Wright Real Estate Montana, and my company is City Homes Missoula.
Fabulous. Now, we're going to talk about a few things that buyers can do for a seller to become create an attractive offer for the seller to choose. In other words, when you got lots of competition, this is a way for them to say, hey, pick me. And many of these things work. Not all the time, but they do work. So the first one we're talking about is closing date, which is on the first page of the buy-sell agreement. So what is totally cool about working with the seller on a closing date?
Sellers have different times that they need to close. They might have a house full of stuff, or they might have a job that is coming 2 months from now, but they would like to make sure that they have their house under contract now. So being flexible on when you can close is helpful.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a really good thing for a buyer to consider and to communicate to a seller. And then that seller may be very amiable to an offer because of that. So should we go to the next one? And we can edit these, by the way. We don't have to stop.
No,
Yeah,
we can just edit them.
The next item for buyers to consider communicating with a seller is the closing costs. Sorry, I had closing date and closing costs together. Closing costs. And, it's kind of a practice for the seller to ask the buyer to pay closing costs. And so what I'm suggesting is that they don't do that if they don't have to. Don't ask the seller to pay for it, because then it has a positive impact with the seller. Did I say that right?
So
I got a lot of sellers and buyers in there.
So whose closing costs are you asking the buyer to?
So the buyer, this is a situation where the buyer would be requesting the seller to pay their closing costs. Very common back in the day. I don't know how much is being done now, but you would go to the seller and say, hey, I have $3,000 in closing costs and I'd like you to pay that.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so you would just make, when you make your offer as a buyer, you make sure that the offer is clean. And when we say clean, that means that there aren't little secret extras that the seller has to pay for, like the buyer's closing costs included in the purchase price. So if you have to maybe put down a little less money so that you can pay your own closing costs, that's a way to get the seller to accept your offer without having to offer more money.
And this, by the way, assumes that maybe your realtor and you know that there's other offers coming that they may be asking for closing costs. We probably won't know that, but it is a possibility we could have some hint that that's going to happen. And then if we're saying to the seller, don't worry about it, we're not going to ask for that, that puts you in a much better position.
Yep, so that's closing costs.
Good to go. Okay, the next one is the inspection.
So what do you do with an inspection to help your offer look better? I'm curious.
Yeah,
I really love inspections, so you tell me.
So first off, and you and I both agree on this, have an inspection. It's just crazy not to. But the second thing is there's kind of two sides to the inspection. There's the petty stuff that doesn't really matter. The cracked outlet, cover. I mean, it just really doesn't matter. And then there's stuff that is, pretty substantial. So it's, electric issue, plumbing, broken windows. There's some pretty substantial stuff. So what I do for my clients and communicating with the seller is I tell them, don't go after the petty stuff. Mm-hmm. Because the fact is if there's something major comes up, that seller has to divulge it to every buyer that comes along then. Now, they're not required to fix it, but they're required to say it exists, and in some cases it could destroy their sale. So it's in their best interest to certainly to take care of it and definitely in their best interest to work with the buyer in figuring out what are you going to do about the issue that has come up. And there's a few ways to deal with that, but the seller should be very open to working with the buyer.
So are you saying that they should do the offer as an as-is, but you have the inspection anyway?
Yes.
And so it's either I'm going to take the house or I'm not?
Yes.
And that's to keep the buyer safe, but then the seller knows they're not going to nitpick things.
Exactly. So, and I really discourage my clients anyway from nitpicking. It's just,
I agree.
It's just not worth it. But it kind of works out as an advantage to the buyer in that if you say as is, you can walk away, you can negotiate to get the thing fixed. But more important than anything, the seller then becomes obligated to do something about it, because it's part of a
value or safety thing, yes.
Yeah, I was thinking the disclosure.
Right, they'd have to disclose it, yes.
They have to disclose it. And if they don't, they can get into some trouble. If they do, they can negatively affect every buyer that comes along. And every buyer could say, I'm out of here, that's not working for me. So it kind of works beautifully if it's done well. So I encourage my clients, go ahead, forge ahead, be prepared to walk away. Don't be afraid. Okay, what's
So
next we got
that's
here?
inspections.
So now we're going to move to appraisal. And so what kind of loans get an appraisal?
All loans.
All
get an
loans get an
appraisal.
appraisal. And the appraisal is for the
Lender.
lender. And so when the appraisal comes in, well, actually, even before that, you and I can walk onto a property with our clients and say, you've got that type of loan, that's going to be a problem with the appraisal. Most of the time it's, raw wood hanging out, untreated or something like that. And so you and I both had clients that actually stepped up and took care of the issue even before they got the client or got the contract. They were planning it, knowing that they may be doing something for the seller. So if you get a gallon of stain to stain a deck, it may be something you're doing for the seller and you don't get the property. But the chance that you're taking is that it's very impressive to the seller, and at some point it pays off in making the appraisal smoother.
Yes, in fact, you and I did a deal like that, where it was a house that had been reclaimed by the bank, and my buyer came in and did some improvements on the property prior to closing to make sure that it appraised. And it worked out beautifully for them, because then the bank didn't have to worry about doing those repairs. They weren't going to anyway. And my buyer's got a great deal.
Right on, yeah. And at the very least, what it'll do is potentially take any barriers in the way of the appraisal.
Right.
Whatever
Exactly right.
the property is. Take away any barriers and you just start sailing through it. So it is worth investing a little bit of time and a little, a bucket of
Bit of a
stain.
risk for the buyer. They the deal might not close.
Exactly.
But if your agent is knowledgeable, it isn't an issue. It should be something that they can pull off, and it's a win-win.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's head into the Wonderlands. So we have
The Wonderland.
we have two
Okay.
terms. We have allowances, and what's the other part?
Concessions?
Concessions, yeah. And so they're known to be things that you can negotiate between the buyer and the seller to correct something. Like, for instance, some nasty carpet needs to be replaced, and like I always say, it's been barfed on by the kids and peed on by the dogs, and it needs to be replaced. Well, typically, a buyer would say, I want that corrected. I want that taken care of. But here's an opportunity as a buyer to work with the seller a goodwill, of course, but also to maybe keep your options available for getting the getting chosen for the purchase. So for an example, you and I can walk into a place, see that nasty carpet,
I see it.
and say, you know what?
That's coming out.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Don't be freaked out about the nasty carpet. You've got a few options, one of which is actually you could still buy the place like this. The worst thing that's going to happen is show up on the inspection. It might show up on an appraisal. I've seen actually some flooring show up on an appraisal. But if you say to the seller, I'm not worried about it, let's just keep going, then you've saved the seller some time and money. That looks pretty good to them. So you keep moving forward with your deal with them.
And you get the carpeting and the flooring that you want.
Exactly.
Instead of the new carpet and flooring that they would have picked, which might be completely different than what you had in mind. And then it's all brand new. It's
Yeah.
lovely.
And you're doing like everybody else that's in the trend right now, and that is no carpet at all anywhere. It's your option now.
Yeah.
All right, the next thing we've got in the list is personal items in a property. So I try not to say anything negative about some sellers. I'm not going to say any names, so I think I'm okay. But I've walked into some houses, and there is stuff. There is stuff inside the house. There is stuff in every room in the house. There is stuff in sheds, and I mean, the garage is full. And so if you imagine the seller, whoever they might be, they're going to have to load up a U-Haul or 2 or 3, and they're shoving this stuff into the U-Haul and what they might be going through. And here's your opportunity to step in and say, you know what? Don't worry about the stuff. If you
Right.
want to leave things, I'll take care of it. Have you done that before?
I've done that before. And it's, in some cases, you have to do that because the people, for example, they have moved. This is a great one. A couple is selling the house of a parent that has just moved into aftercare or long-term care. And it's all their parents' stuff, and they know that it's just mostly just old things. And if you're willing to move into the house and clear that out, take it as is, then it's a huge load off the sellers, because they literally have to call someone in to come and have that all done, because the person who owns all the stuff isn't in the picture anymore. So that is one of the circumstances where as is, take all the stuff really helps out a buyer.
Yeah. And I have actually seen people trying to shove the last of their items into a U-Haul and couldn't get it in. So at that point, you can step in and just say, you know what? You can actually do this proactively. When you see what they're facing, the first time you go in that house, I've actually written it in a buy-sell agreement. That,
Yeah.
if you need
Absolutely.
to leave things. Yeah.
Personal property can stay in the house.
Yeah. The only thing I caution sometimes is batteries, tires, propane
yeah.
tanks, dead animals. I mean, there's just some things. If you want to take it on,
freezers have dead animals in them.
if you want to take it on, you certainly can. But we can put some limits on what you're going to be left with. Like chemicals, and you can say, okay, we'll take everything but that.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's personal property.
Yeah. So the last thing that you sort of in your arsenal that you can do is rent back. So describe what we're talking about with rent back.
So rent back is when a seller, for example, hasn't found the house that they want to buy yet. So the house, instead of making it contingent on them finding suitable housing, you would go ahead and close and let the owners rent back until they find a house to buy. And of course, you can put a cap on it, and if it needs to be 6 months or whatever. But it allows the buyer to lock in a rate and close on their deal, and then have their mortgage paid by the seller until they can find a place to stay. There's other circumstances too. Can you think of any?
So the only one I can think of is the one we were talking about earlier, where the seller is having a home built,
Oh,
and they've just received notice that there's a delay in getting that home completed, and so they could really, really use an extra month. And so here's one of those things that's not necessarily a proactive thing you would do to get the offer made, but it's one of those things you could do to make sure that you're exercising goodwill with the seller, so which keeps them moving along and making sure that everything is going well. But the only other thing, and you'll know this more than I, you'll want to have an ironclad contract. Don't just like, oh yeah, you can stay. Make sure there's a contract.
Oh, yeah.
And that these
Yes.
people don't wind up being squatters.
Well, this is where having a real estate agent that knows what they're doing is super important.
Yeah.
Because if you do a rent back, you have to have a security deposit, and you do have to have like month-to-month term where you can terminate the tenancy. Also, another reason that you will do a rent back is just a simple one, a 2-week rent back. So someone can close on their home and take that money, buy the next house, and then take 2 weeks to move all of their stuff into that next house. And that's something that it's just a 2-week window, but it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And makes the seller just really smile on that offer.
They will like you. All right, so that's all we have for the types of things that buyers can do, either to encourage the seller to choose their offer, or to at least create goodwill through the process so that you don't run into issues that can be formidable. So, any last thoughts?
No, I think that covers it.
Right on.
So now, what I'd like to do is that little short clip where we say, hi,
Oh, yeah.
Tom and I are doing these videos
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
this video is, so we can do an introduction and say, this video is about what we're doing.
Exactly. So this is part of the series.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
whatever we call it.
So ways for a buyer to, this video is one of the ways that we have to think of a script.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we'll just do it, and then it can clip onto the front or the back of any video. We just have to think of the text.
So this is basically about getting your offer chosen in advance of others.
So make your offer shine.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. And
Yeah.
then the underside of that, though, like even the last one is rent back. That's not part of that, although you could include it in
Oh, you
advance.
do.
Yeah.
You do.
You could say, hey, if
It's
you'll
part of
choose
your
my
offer.
yeah, you can choose my offer. I will rent back
back.
to you. Yeah, especially if you find out that they are building.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and you know what I did one time? It was just crazy brilliant. So it was about warranty, which we're going to do in the next set of videos. We're going to do warranty, home warranty, right? And so I would encourage my people to purchase a warranty for the seller because they're moving into a home, right? But if they go into a home that they're building, it's all under warranty.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
Right.
So yeah, it works really well. I like the home warranty thing.
So I am Sheila Mischke. I'm a broker at Kelly Wright Real Estate, Montana, and I have a company, City Homes Missoula, here in Missoula.
And I'm Tom Russell. I live here in Missoula, and I work with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And I don't have a whole bunch of other stuff behind my name.
You're a sales agent. And right now we're doing a series on how to make your offer look great for a seller and not necessarily ask more money.
Exactly. And in fact, so the things that we've described or we're going to describe to you, there's not a lot of agents doing this. And so if you've got somebody that is being proactive and saying, hey, you can try this, you can try this, you may not want to do all of them. You may only select one or two, or maybe none. But they give you a head, or
Edge?
yes, edge. I like that word. On getting the offer accepted, your offer accepted, above and beyond anybody else. That's the goal.
And here we go.
Are we
There we
done?
go.
Okay. Okay. How you like my little trailer? Have you seen that before?
I have not.